G'day, g'day. As we come closer and closer to the release of the next-gen consoles, the PlayStation 5 and the stupidly named Xbox Series X, I decided to take a few moments to soak in some of the comments, videos, expectations, and hype surrounding the two. I've largely removed myself from social media such as Reddit, Facebook, and Twitter, and then got out of the loop from what the general consensus is regarding the upcoming consoles and what narratives people are trying to spin. But every now and then I come across a YouTube channel or a single video, or I manage to get pointed towards a Reddit or Twitter thread that is either misleading, completely false, or not constructive in the slightest. Something like hype videos where the person is incapable of being critical about a game or platform due to their bias, or threads and videos where someone is bashing the piece of plastic they like the least. Now, I personally don't see anything wrong with someone being biased towards a product, but it depends on the situation. If they want to sit there and chat about their favourite game or console and why they love it, that's great. We all enjoy the same great hobby, and it's good to hear differing opinions from time to time. I take issue when people can't see their own bias and present videos as informative or try to start a discussion, all the while they're blasting a single company or mindlessly praising another. I also take issue when people are incapable of seeing criticism towards something and take personal issue with feedback or flat out pretend a certain issue with a game doesn't exist. So in this video, I figured I'd present my view on the topic of next-gen consoles and throw an opinion or two in there regarding exclusives, seeing as they're such a big part of the community in a lot of ways, to try and show that differing opinions can come from a place of reason and to also encourage more reasonable discussion. Now, first of all, when I say exclusive, I am using the term as it should be used, for a game released exclusively on a single platform. Not for a multi-plat game that's on PC as well as a single console, and so individuals cling to that opposite console being exempt as a means to brag. That doesn't make sense. So anyone who thinks Sunset Overdrive is an exclusive just because your PlayStation brethren can't buy it, please drop that usage. Your usage of the word is incorrect, and it's embarrassing to see people spread the incorrect use of the word like a cult spreading the word of their savior. A bit of background on me. The demo for Abe's Oddysee was the first video game I played as far as I can recall. I may have played other games, but that's the earliest memory I have of playing a game. It very well could have been perhaps Spy Fox on PC or Mario 64 on the Nintendo 64. But I don't have a vivid memory of that like I do with Abe. I grew up as a console gamer with very brief moments of PC gaming. Those PC games, mind you, I'll hopefully be streaming once I'm back in Australia. Can't wait for that. I don't give a fuck if they're kids games, alright? I'm fucking playing them, goddammit. Since 2017 though, I made the move to PC as my primary platform. Since then, I have played about 7 games on Xbox and PS4. 5 of them to completion. Those 5 being Monster Hunter World, God of War 4, Bloodborne, Spider-Man, and Destiny 2. The other 2 games played being Halo 5 and Final Fantasy 15. I have no interest in returning to console gaming, but I am not a fanboy or PC elitist. I'm more than happy to recognise advantages and disadvantages across both platforms, and I'm more than willing to recognise when a game is great, whether it's exclusive or multi-platform. I'm not going to suddenly choose that a game is shit just because it's only on a single console and not on PC or something. I want to set that straight to get across the fact that I'm not going to be unreasonable in my statements or go against the grain on purpose. There is logic to what I say and believe. Now that the table has been set and the candle's lit, let's dig in. So far we've seen some games from the PS5 reveal event and have seen glimpses of gameplay from for the new Xbox, with another presentation coming in July. Better graphics is to be expected obviously, but I feel like we're already at the point of diminishing returns, and I'd like to see how else these consoles are going to push gaming. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited because I love new tech, but I'm also being realistic. Too much hype is being thrown towards the teraflops of the X and SSD of the PS5, without any real world benchmarks. The overexcited among you need to temper your expectations down a touch and wait for some real footage that can be properly analysed. The X is suggested to house GPU power equivalent to a 2080 or 2080 Super, which are both rather expensive and very powerful GPUs. Some even say the GPU power will rival the 2080 Ti, which is very doubtful. The SSD in the PS5 is supposed to outperform anything available for the PC. Equivalent read-write speeds will cost you a fair bit, and they aren't going to be integrated to talk to the hardware quite like the PS5 SSD supposedly will. Rather exciting stuff, but what does it mean for consumers? We already know Assassin's Creed Valhalla is targeting minimum 30 FPS at 4K, which makes me nervous for those hoping for an FPS over resolution marketing push. Will the X have the option to run at 1440 60 FPS? Will that GPU power, that will cost a fraction of what it would on PC, show something more impressive than a low frame rate with sharp screenshots? The promise of all the hardware in the PS5 being built around the SSD exclusively sounds great on paper, but will it have any real impact outside of shortened load times? Shortened load times is awesome, but we already have people hyping this up as a complete game changer that will change how games are experienced and how they look. I've got an SSD. Booting Escape from Tarkov up and loading into a game is a much better experience for me now than on my 7200 RPM hard drive, but the game doesn't run at a higher FPS. I can't load textures from a longer distance away to distinguish other players before they see me. Maybe next gen games will actually utilize this new SSD by being designed around it specifically and make further distant objects load into view earlier or offer other benefits, but that's my point. We don't have anything to show this yet, so please just simmer down and wait for some real world results. I imagine the new Ratchet & Clank will be that first game to showcase what's possible with the custom SSD, but we'll have to wait out for that. I'm still excited though, because if the promises are delivered, then both Sony and Microsoft will show us that consoles can in fact stand out in the tech world and do something new and innovative, which is great for the industry going forward. If the new consoles end up being as great as they are being advertised, then the standard for gaming will rise. Instead of consoles holding devs back due to being the lowest common denominator, it will be lower end or possibly mid-range PCs depending on their configurations and what you class as low or mid-range. This will lead to those with higher end hardware potentially getting more use out of their parts and see games be pushed even further beyond! No matter your preferred platform, this is an absolute win if it really does turn out to be true. I won't say the new consoles won't be doing anything exciting, because I'm sure they will, but I'm also not going to be hyping up the consoles until something real and genuine is shown. Just like with ray tracing, sure, the promise sounded awesome, and those screenshots looked kinda cool, but none of it meant anything until the games were actually released and you could see people actually playing on the hardware in real time. For those who haven't experienced ray tracing yet, check out Metro Exodus, please. It is the best looking game I've ever seen so far. The controllers. This topic I'm rather intrigued by because many consumers seem incredibly supportive of less consumer friendly options, and that just leaves me dumbfounded. Imagine that. A company releases a controller and the natural reaction for some is to be angry that they've been giving as many options as possible. Now, the Xbox controllers should come with a rechargeable pack as standard. The fact this is still a separate accessory after all these years is ridiculous. But having the option to remove the battery itself is a great feature. The DualShock 5, or DualSense as it's now called, houses an internal battery just as the DualShock 3 and 4 did. Not a great option for when it inevitably dies, and seeing a new touchpad and LED light being so prominent again is a bit of a bummer for me personally, as I see it more of a gimmick, except for the touchpad usage in The Last of Us 2. Being able to play the guitar in that game and pretty much play any song you want is the single time I've had my interest piqued by the touchpad. Using it as a makeshift mouse for typing is okay, but Sony included a 3.5mm jack for headsets. Excellent for those who might use it. Confusingly, the narrative concocted once the controls were shown is that the Xbox Series X controller is inferior due to still using batteries, because who still uses batteries in 2020, am I right? Oddly enough, no one made the argument that wired connections is a thing of the past and everyone should have wireless by now. Both arguments make no sense anyway, but would those people rather have less options available, or are they just jumping onto the next hate bandwagon because the piece of plastic they dislike sneezed? More options is the better choice. And speaking of more options, I reckon controllers should come standard with 2 extra buttons on the back of the controller. So a bit like how you have the Xbox Elite controller with its extra paddles, every controller should have 2 paddles on the back of it as a standard. Having those extra button inputs are just awesome, and I don't know why it's not being more widely adopted. Online services, oh boy. Multiplayer shouldn't have a price on it. You're paying a console manufacturer money for servers hosted by a different company. PlayStation used to be free. Switch used to be free. Having a paid online service served no extra benefit to consumers from a multiplayer perspective. The games offered each month for PlayStation and Xbox aren't yours to keep when it comes to PlayStation Plus and Xbox Gold, and some discounts, in the case of PlayStation Plus, are actually locked behind that paywall. So some games will have their standard discount, but you get bonus discounts for subscribing to this service, and I think that's a little ridiculous personally. The fact a new set of consoles are coming soon, and this whole issue with paid multiplayer isn't a trending topic for consumers to rally behind is disturbing. Instead, we get loud, incoherent rambling about which set of grips is more comfortable for a user to rest their hands on. There isn't much else to say on this matter. Paying for online is silly and nothing more than an easy cash grab that many users are just going to accept. It's unfortunate. I won't tell you how to spend your money, but I'll happily encourage you all to quit your subscriptions and let companies know that manufactured solutions to problems created by those very companies shouldn't ever be an option. Now, on to exclusives. Since moving to the open and consumer-friendly platform that is the PC, I no longer agree with exclusivity when it's paid to be exclusive by a company. In the past, I was most definitely in support of it due to the stupidity that is the console wars. I cringe thinking back to how I would brag about Mass Effect not being on PS3, and how Gears of War was the greatest looking game to ever come out at the time. It definitely was when I first played it, but I wasn't praising the game for its accomplishment. I was praising it because it wasn't on the opposite console, so it was like a personal bragging right for myself. The timed exclusivity of Call of Duty DLC was just an absolute pain in the ass because my mate owned the games on PlayStation, and at the time it had the Xbox exclusive deal, so we always had to wait the extra month to play all the latest zombie maps. And the exclusivity deal for Rise of the Tomb Raider rubbed me the wrong way, but first party exclusivity was something I never really paid attention to as a consumer. Nowadays, I don't see the point of any of it from a consumer perspective. I fully understand why a company will push for exclusive games, DLC, or marketing rights, but it does no good to the consumer, and that's mostly my main focus now. Exclusives can help push brand awareness and sales for a console, but how does that help us? How does someone who might only be able to afford a single platform benefit by having a bunch of games not come out on their box? Won't a wider audience also be better for the developer? My current top game of all time was exclusive to PC, but it's getting a console port now. I love this. More people get to play a wonderful game. Horizon Zero Dawn will soon be played at its best. Bloodborne, unfortunately, is trapped at 30 or less FPS and had its possible audience restricted due to exclusivity. The game is terrific, but only being on PS4 did nothing for the game itself. It only put a bit of money into Sony's wallet. Microsoft not allowing a port for Halo 5 when every other Halo game is about to be on PC makes zero sense, and only limits the amount of people who can experience the game. Imagine Halo releasing on all systems, one of the most high-profile games of all time, being played by all communities of gaming together. Throw crossplay in there, and you've got, potentially, people on PlayStation playing with people on Xbox, and just enjoying this awesome series. I'm all for the consumer, and not one of us benefit by playing a game that someone else can't play. I love the Total War games, but back in the day, before I had a PC, I was patiently waiting for the console port that never came. Same with Stalker. I was desperate to play that game and was so excited when word was getting around that it was coming to consoles. Fun fact, Shogun 2 and Stalker Call of Pripyat were two of the very first games I bought when I finally bought my own PC in 2012. Obviously, studio resources play a big factor into what can be done and what can't be done, but if the option is there to release to everyone, but a single company tells the developer no, release it here and here only, that doesn't sit well with me. The point is often made that exclusivity encourages competition. I've had many favourite games that came about due to the dedication of the team behind it, not just because a different game only released on the Switch. Competition can exist in many forms that is friendly to the consumer. Take the Series X and Microsoft's stance on backwards compatibility. This is awesome for us. Not everyone is interested in playing older games, and that's fine, but for those that want to utilise it, the option is there. Remember what I said before, more options is the better choice. Otherwise you run into issues like I've had where you want to play Paper Mario for the first time in your life, but you have to fork out bulk dollary dues on the game, then you got to worry about the hardware eventually failing on you. Backwards compatibility, or a dedicated virtual store that Nintendo fucking hadn't abandoned, solve this issue, and is good for the consumer. Digital preservation should be a bigger focus than what it currently is. Outside of backward compatibility for the X, you've got the free upgrade from a current gen game to the new gen version when the next gen consoles come out. Another awesome move for the consumer. This is how you get a console to stand out and do something different than what's been carried out in the past. People get too caught up in what image the brand has and who the mascots are when it does nothing at our level. Guess what? Sony won't crumble just because some fanboys aren't able to screech for their mascots and brag about being able to play a game that other people can't. This is a quick way to halt progress in the gaming industry, something I do not agree with and can't see the logic for when looking at those who praise stale progression and less consumer choice. Can consoles exist without exclusives? I believe they can. Does it make sense for a console manufacturer to push exclusives as another revenue for money from game sales as well as hardware sales? Bloody oath it makes sense business-wise. I think one way an exclusive game or series can be released to multiple platforms without the publisher losing money is by acting as just that, a publisher. Imagine Nintendo releasing the next Mario game on everything, but the condition for it is that other companies take a very minimal cut. I say minimal because a console manufacturer is not going to take a 0% cut for having a game published on their console, regardless of its previous exclusivity status. That would be real consumer choice and very consumer friendly for us, whilst also increasing the potential reach of a game. As for the fanboys who infect this hobby, I just don't see the reason behind hive mind levels of blind appraisal or hate bandwagons for a game people supposedly aren't interested in. We all play the same hobby here. There are games I dislike that others would probably question me for and vice versa. That can lead to interesting discussions about individual interests and what certain games or genres mean to each person. Let's keep that as the norm and stop encouraging the trolling and toxicity. Whether it's desperate defense or mindless attacks, both sides are doing the same thing to this great hobby, stunting our growth and stopping it from being taken more seriously. This video is ranty, but it's something I had on my mind, so why not get it out there for anyone that might be interested. Let me know what your thoughts are for the next gen, and on the topic of differing opinions, how about you drop your top 3, 5, or even 10 games of all time in the comments. Here are my 10 to get the ball rolling. The first game is my number 1, the others are in random order, and if you ask me the same question on a different day, I'd probably swap a few out for other games that I love just as much. Disco Elysium, Mass Effect 2, God of War 4, Hitman Blood Money, Crash Bandicoot Trilogy, I can't pick one. Spyro the Dragon Trilogy, same as above. Abe's Odyssey and Exodus, yeah, I know those last 3 entries are 8 games in total, but I can't choose between them, okay? Sue me. Divinity Original Sin 2, Doom Eternal. Honestly, I could swap between this and 2016 as both are insanely amazing. And Bloodborne. My god, I wish I could play this on my PC. It's cosmic horror at its finest. Thanks for watching, stay safe during these very strange times, comfort each other, please look after yourselves, and until the next video, have a good one.